Good evening, everyone. We'll call the Human Services Committee meeting to order.
Check your spam folder.
If everyone's had an opportunity to read the minutes from last meeting, and there's no corrections, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
You right?
I meant to switch it.
A motion,
okay with
sorry.
No
Oh,
problem.
second.
And a second.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, opposed, carried. Privilege of the floor, is anyone here to speak to the privilege of the floor? Not seeing any, we'll move on. Been asked to take things out of order this evening. If no one has an objection, I would like to move number 4 to the top. Gentleman presenting has another obligation. He's actually presenting the same thing at 5:30, so if no one objects. Should we move that one to the top?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we'll bring number 4 forward, proposed resolution to modify acceptance of Chautauqua Water and Wastewater Cooperative Grant.
Hello.
If everyone would please just introduce yourself to, obviously us, but also people online, and
Good evening, my name is Bill Boria. I'm retired from full-time service with the county, but I came back to work, part-time to work on this project for the health department.
thank you.
Valerie List, Director of Administrative Services for Department of Health and Human Services.
Jessica Worsley, Environmental Health Director, Chautauqua County Department of Health and Human Services.
I'm going to let Bill talk to you about this. This is a grant that, it's been through a lot of back and forth with the state for a couple of years now, I think, as to how it was going to be arranged. And we had a phase of this grant that was put into place, I think, a couple of years ago. Phase 1, not maybe phase 3. A couple phases also were canceled out. And now it's come again to a whole new iteration. It's almost like starting from scratch. So there was a prior resolution for this grant, and you'll note that it's mentioned in here, but it really doesn't have a lot to do with what the grant looks like now.
So this is a shared services grant for small municipalities for their water and wastewater systems in the county. And originally in 2018, when the first resolution was passed to accept the grant, we were going to do an engineering planning study of all the small systems and look at their operator needs and system needs. And our work plan was initially approved by the Department of State, but then it started making the rounds in the Department of State, and it ultimately was sent back to us for rework. Instead of doing the $50,000 planning portion of the project, they asked us to do a pilot project, and that is for $371,175. So it's dragged on, a little bit of issues with COVID, with other things, Department of State, and we finally have an executed contract as of July of this year. And this project will assist small communities in their operators and their operations. We will have a part-time contractor who will assist with things like emergency repairs, and also to coordinate things like maintenance for routine maintenance that helps to ensure the system is going to run properly. Unfortunately, many of these operators, they wear many different hats, and they have many different tasks that they have to do in addition to water and wastewater operators. So some of the things that help keep a system running top-notch don't get done, like exercising water main valves, for example. Sometimes those things get put aside. So we will be helping to make sure those things get done by purchasing specialized equipment to assist the operators to do that, and providing a team that can go out and, much like the highway departments have, mutual aid with each other and help each other on projects. We envision this being the same thing. And then we're going to do some mapping that'll further assist with operations and maintenance, and provide an opportunity for when a staff retires, we'll have a mobile app that new staff can use. They'll be much more familiar with the system just by looking at a mobile app and knowing where the valves are, mains are, lift stations are, what have you. I think in a nutshell, that's pretty much it. We've invited Village of Sherman, Town of Ripley, and Town of Cherry Creek to participate in the pilot project, and they were selected based on some of this work that we had done previously, some of the planning work. They also have very small customer bases and some of the highest rates in the county. So, they're the people that, or the municipalities that we feel have some of the biggest needs. And this will ultimately be extended to other municipalities. We're just going to get going with a small group in anticipation of, including others as the project proceeds.
Thank you for the information. Our system is growing and growing and growing, and so it needs changes to keep up with how it grows. And people retiring, they don't need a map to say where everything is, because they know where it is. But those new people coming in, it could use that extra help, and that's important to look into the future for future use too. Anybody can getting that transferred over onto something that's a little more stable in someone's brain is helpful. So, any other questions, comments? Chairman Shagnon.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, the first whereas says that the grant runs a 5-year period, which ends March of next year. Do you expect to have this pilot project completed by March of next year?
No. We're just getting going with that. We anticipate one of the things we're going to have to do is request an extension. Department of State is fully aware of that. I mean, we just got an executed contract in July of 2022, so.
Right, so the beginning date really didn't mean a lot in the grand scheme of things when they finally finished figuring out what they actually wanted us to do and how much money they were going to give us. For the original pilot, planning phase of the original grant, we had written a resolution, fully aware that we would have to come back with another one when we knew more about what we were actually going to do. And then when we finally got this contract, that original resolution sort of traveled with it, and we found out that, wait a minute, we never did the rest of the work because we just, the two pieces never came together. And so we needed to do this to allow the county executive to enter into agreements with municipalities and all those things that do travel with our grants. So that is mainly why we did this, but also to just come around and explain what had happened with that grant that was so much bigger a few years ago and never got off the ground.
Well, I think this is a fabulous opportunity for the county. My concern is the county executive executing a grant agreement that says we're going to be done by the end of next March, and we have no practical means of making that happen.
Right. The grant's already been signed. That's already completed.
signed by the county executive.
Yes.
So
I
what are we
believe so.
doing with this resolution then?
Making up for
It's because-
past,
It says the last resolve clause is that the county executive is hereby authorized to enter into agreements with municipal entities and the provisions of the grant.
the original resolution for this grant in its original state was used as backup for that, for the current contract, right or wrong.
Okay,
And now we're saying, well, now we have to go and make up some agreements with Ripley and the different towns that are involved in this. And so this resolution is more to get that clause, the whereas clause, so that we can contract with those other entities, not the state itself.
and so that the county executive can enter into any amendments to the.
And that as well, that
Okay.
as well. I mean, they really, I think the people that we worked with changed a couple times. This really was a torturous thing. It went back and forth forever, and you would have thought that they would have changed the beginning date when they finally did come out with the contract, but they did not.
You would think.
But they're fully on board now, finally, and I do believe that we won't have any problem getting an extension.
Well, and one of the things that the Department of State did was they reclassified this grant as a recurring, wasn't it a recurring renewable grant? On a, so it's, they've already done that. They already realize that it's going to take longer than just a few months to get this done.
So maybe to avoid confusion, we could strike that clause in the whereas that says for the 5-year period, April 1, 2018 to March 31, 2023, so that it's open as to the time period of the grant.
If you like, that's generally, we always do put that in there, but if that's what you want to do, certainly.
In this case, because it's clear it's going to go beyond the
Right,
March
Right.
31,
right.
2023.
It does have in there that, where is it in there? That as long as the county is mandated to provide the program services, so we write a resolution so that as these grants renew and extend, we don't have to have another resolution. So those clauses are in here as well, already, so whatever you like to do.
If everyone's comfortable with striking the first whereas, I do agree it does make, what's this in a timetable? I understand there, in a month or two, we could extend this, which we are hoping that we do anyway. But if Mr. Abdullah is okay with striking the first whereas clause, I'm okay. If the committee has any questions or comments about that, or if someone would wish to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. Strike it.
No, I'd like to second that.
Okay. All those in favor of striking the first whereas clause in this resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So any other discussion on the resolution as amended?
I just want to make a comment. I talked to Bill quite a bit this morning, a lot longer than the few minutes that you said you had. But a couple of exciting things on this, I think, and beyond what you've already stated here, but you said you created a program with JCC to teach, certify water operators, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
And
That's
then you
something that
are
we did
working
a couple of years ago.
Yeah, you're working with BOCES to train high school kids.
That's the, we
Introduce
haven't
them.
worked with them yet, but that's,
You're working, that's part of.
that's our goal.
But it's a great idea.
To have
Yeah.
a
Great idea.
vocational program, so kids right out of high school can step into these. These are good paying jobs, and
Yeah.
they're community-related jobs, and we just need to get the word out there that they're
Right.
there and get people trained so that they can fit right into them.
And the
So-
training will be local, obviously,
Right,
instead
yeah.
of sending them out for training, so that's a
Well,
great idea.
Even the recertification for current operators from JCC, that they have to travel to Morristown?
They have to go there to get their initial operator
okay.
certification, yes. And for water operators, it's about a week or two, depending on the license. For wastewater, which we haven't quite gotten into yet with JCC, they're working on it, it takes more than a month, full-time. It's a huge expense, so if they could do that here through JCC, it's tremendous savings.
Right, so it's to help with personnel, finding them, training them.
Yeah.
And also, there's some equipment included here. You were saying some of the things that,
There is.
some of the different sewer systems wouldn't be able to purchase on their own. And as a group, they'll be able to, through this grant,
Right.
get some of those things.
This is an ideal program, I think, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just have a question on the amendment. It's to strike only a portion of the first whereas
Yes.
clause,
The
correct?
date.
The dates.
Just the dates, okay,
Yes, I
sorry.
guess.
What I heard was strike the entire whereas clause, like,
Yeah.
I don't think we can do that.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Well, I appreciate you moving us up, so I can get to my next presentation.
Yes, all those in favor of, the resolution, please say aye.
As amended.
As
Aye.
amended.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go back to our normal order. Number one is local law intro 15-22, a local law providing for a management salary plan for county officers and employees.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Debbie Mikowski, Director of HR. So I have some notes just to sort of make sure that I highlight all of the different areas of this local law proposal. So in an effort to respond to recruitment and retention issues in a labor market that none of us have ever seen before, we're requesting approval to make changes to the management group salary plan. So the proposed local law that you have before you is to request to increase most positions by 3 salary grades, with a very small number of exceptions. These proposed changes will allow us to put a plan in place over the next year or so that will allow us to appropriately pay our existing employees for their years of experience in their current positions. It will allow us to attract and recruit the best candidates for management positions by paying a salary closer to market rates. And it establishes room for growth, or what I like to call runway, in the new salary grade, so that we don't have to keep requesting approval for across-the-board annual increases every year for the same individuals who are maxed out in their current salary grade. I'm sure you're all aware, the county paid for a third party to conduct a management salary survey. That survey was done in April of 2021, meaning those comparisons are from market research that's nearly a year old already. The proposed changes don't get us to a competitive state, they get us closer to a market rate as of April of 2021. So my plan, the next 3 to 4 years, conduct another market survey, see where we fall, and then what steps we can proactively include in the budget process to move the county into an overall competitive state for the management group. With your approval to this local law, there are 6 individuals who need an immediate increase to the minimum salary, to get up to the minimum salary of their new grade. Currently, this is the only financial impact at this time. The dollar amount and the number of employees has actually decreased twice since just Friday. As recently as this afternoon, it decreased again. So 6 individuals need an immediate impact, will need an immediate change for a total impact of $9,948. That is it at this time. Any salary increases will be done within the newly established grades, within the 2023 approved budget, and are yet to be determined. Basically, we've lagged behind the market for a number of years, so, the expectation is not that we're gonna right the ship quickly. It will take a few years of careful consideration again, working within the budget and working within these newly approved ranges. Full disclosure, there are three new positions included in the local law. Two of them will be discussed in, I believe it's agenda item number 8 tonight. But one other position will not be discussed, and I didn't want to just kind of slip that through. I wanted to provide the opportunity to discuss it further, and the director is here, if you'd like to dive into that now. It is the second page, second position down, the Deputy Director of Office for Aging Services.
Mary Ann Spanos, Director of the Chautauqua County Office for Aging Services. So actually, prior to our new director and the county executive deciding on changes to salary grades, I have been pursuing, I would say for 6 to 8 months, adding a management position for the Office for Aging Services. I am currently the only manager in the Office for Aging Services, and our budget has grown from $3 million back in 2007 to over $5 million. In the past, before I was director, when there was no director, the office was left to CSEA union employees to run in the absence of a director. As we've had union issues, because I don't like to tackle a subordinate issue on my own, I think it's good to have other staff there, but all of my senior level staff are CSEA. So I was talking with our former HR director, that she did not feel it was good practice to have, one manager when the director is out. I've had to have union employees go represent the budget or do other things. That's really not appropriate to their level of employment. So we started pursuing a deputy director. We already have. And actually, we had one employee, Dana Corwin. She was regraded and named the Director of Aging Health Services. And this has caused a lot of confusion amongst the community. Is Mary Ann still there? Because you have this Director of Aging Health Services under Office for the Aging and the Director of Office for Aging Services. So we're proposing to change that position from Director of Aging Health Services to Deputy Director of Office for Aging Services, making it, and essentially that person is functioning as the Deputy Director, and there would be no financial impact. The salary has been set commensurate with what she's already being paid. So.
Thank you for coming in and bringing us up to speed on that. It's very helpful, and by the sounds to me, that it's basically just redoing the title. And I suppose responsibility, because there will be gained responsibility in that, but it's within the budget. That's good news. So, sounds good to me. Any other comments, questions from the committee?
I like the fact that if the position titles help make sense about the organizational structure, it makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's great. And then I wanted to ask you about the salary. You said you've done the survey or some work over the last couple of years. Is that the same thing now? Are you doing that now with you said 2 years ago?
Yeah, so the third-party survey was done in April of 2021. So we're going on 2 years ago.
So who do you compare that with? Other counties?
Other county,
statewide?
yep. Yep, exactly. So other counties, in addition to, private sector, regional, research.
So that we can say our salary base for this organization makes sense across the state and compared to other counties and.
Correct. The proposed move would get us closer to the market research. We would still be lagging behind as far as being in a competitive state. Where we may be on par with what other counties, or outside of, county government, companies are offering, it would get us close to being.
So we wanna look at equity, but also be able to attract the most, the best qualified people for the positions and be able
Exactly.
to reward the people who are already doing the work.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
This study obviously has the wage comparison, and it must have been low because we've decided to raise it by 3. In that same study, were benefits and retirement and all that looked at as well? Or how does the county fall in that aspect related to other counties and private sector?
So this was strictly a comparison of base salary. So benefits did not factor into this at all.
In my eyes, benefits is always a big factor in a sense. Some private sector jobs make more on a salary level, but they don't have the same type of benefits and, maybe not a chance of a retirement system, so they have to take some of their salary and put toward benefits of other sorts. So I just was curious if the new study would or could include some of that comparison as well.
I think it could, being new to my position, I'm not sure if that's an option for the statewide, county survey that's conducted. But as far as outside of county government employment, sure, there's a pretty big difference in what is offered in addition to what the employee cost may be for those offered options.
Certainly is, some companies treat people better than others, so it's not a complete unweighted, it's not a complete out of balance as one may assume, but some companies really, there really could be a difference. I think it's just an important piece to also have in consideration.
Certainly,
So,
and that is something that my team from a recruiting effort have started to highlight, what are the benefits, what are the
Sure.
perks of county government employment.
no.
Yeah, recruitment and retention are of the best candidates and people who you have available who are in office, yeah.
Other comments, questions associated with this proposed local law with any of the ranges or salaries?
No.
We don't need to vote on a local law, so thank you for the information this evening.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing up the new position, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is local law intro 16-22, a local law providing for a management salary plan for county officers and employees, Director of Real Property Tax Services 3, and Director of Human Resources.
So this is the exact same conversation. We are simply carving out 2 term positions, which are required to have a 45-day waiting period before they can be put through. We didn't want to lump these 2 positions in with the previous larger local law proposal, as that would hold up the entire group waiting for that 45-day period.
Okay. Questions, comments associated to these 2 positions? think so. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other questions on this local introduction. We'll move into our proposed resolutions. Proposed resolution, item number 3, proposed resolution number 1, amend 2022 budget appropriations to mental hygiene for MH Law 4303. Carmelo, I know you're very well inclined with this one, so why don't you come on down?
We gonna try. Carmelo Hernandez, Director, Chautauqua County Department of Mental Hygiene.
And Kathleen Dennison, Budget Director for Chautauqua County. You want me to lead off?
Yeah.
This resolution is to further amend the budget for mental hygiene law, which is the,
Yeah, I know what it is.
okay.
Yeah, so this is the 730 mental hygiene law. I know exactly what this is. This is the incarcerated individuals that are either deemed not fit, or we're trying to find if they're fit to stand trial and or for their charges. So this is the 730 mental hygiene law that unfortunately 100% of us are responsible for it in the county. I do have some news on it from when I was at the conference with the DCSs across from New York State. What we found is we had judges there, public defenders and district attorneys, and one of the things that we're working on is, what we found out at the conference was the understanding of the law. Even the judges had a little bit of trouble with it, and they wanted to collaborate. So overall, one of the things that we're setting out to do here is to meet with our judges and our public defenders, family court and criminal court, to sit down and create a ongoing meeting where we can really sit down and discuss and become proactive when it comes to the 730 law.
Well, and thank you. This is a item up for discussion every budget year because it's an unknown. It can vary, and it has, and it's just done that. And it is, in your department, it is one of the only items that's a local share of cost. So I know it's always, it's never good when it's so fluctuating or unknown. So it's good to hear some news that it's getting looked at, and hopefully gonna have some revisions made to how it's operated, and hopefully we can see some real change in the years to come. Questions, anyone?
Are you hopeful that there will be real change?
Hopeful in the sense that from the conference that we had in October, then we fast forward in November and we went to Albany and we got to meet with all the commissioners from OASIS, OMH, and OPWDD. And one of the things that came up was the 730 law again. So it is an ongoing conversation that's happening in Albany, and we are taking the next steps and advocating in the sense of, really using it to its effectiveness the way it should be used, and also B, in terms of being proactive and not reactive, where we just receive the bills and saying, hey, you're 100% responsible for this.
Because this will be the second time we've increased. The first time was 350,000?
Correct, Mr.
Yeah.
Proctor, yes. The first amendment was in August, and that was to increase the budget from 150,000 to 500,000. And that amendment, we were able to take that out of the contingency fund. Unfortunately, the department does already have invoices beyond the $500,000 level. So that's why we are asking to increase it again, another 380,000. And that is coming out of fund balance because the contingency fund has been mostly exhausted.
And we have no choice with this, we gotta cover it.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
So it's 880 that'll be for 2022
Yeah.
from budgeted 150.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do it any misjustice of, that the program is needed, and is utilized, and we we'll pay for it because that's what we need to do. But I do agree with the way that this, it's at least being visited to see if it's as efficient as it should be too. So, that way we can maybe properly plan for it, as a program in.
Yes, because we are somewhat at risk in 2023 for exceeding the budget.
Sure.
Because the budget in 2023 it's more than this year. It's more than the adopted budget this year, but it's $250,000 for 2023. So it will obviously be a challenge to, given current environments, be a challenge to stay within that budget next year.
Do we have any kind of buffer for this, or it's just as it comes in?
It's as it comes in. So one of the things we can do is most definitely having the meetings with the judges. So one of the things that we hope that I found out from just collaborating with my colleagues is having the conversations on the front end. So some judges and or district attorneys and or public defenders, they become a little bit, I don't want to say afraid, but they're hesitant. They don't really understand the law to its extent, so they'll put in for it. And once it's put in, it's put in. So one of the things is getting ahead of it. And if we could have just a conversation as, let's say, an ongoing committee, we may have a couple people that we may have to put through the 730, and maybe we could hit it on the front end from here with local providers instead of having them sent up and having them get there, wait there. Then we don't know how long they're going to be there until we finally get the bill that they're going to be released. Either they were fit to stand trial or not fit to stand trial.
So is this is county by county?
Oh, yeah, across New York State, yeah.
So what do other counties say about how they manage this?
Same way we're doing it right here, same exact way. Because they also won't allow us to use clinic revenue or any grants to pay for it either.
And this is the law, New York used to pay 50% of it up
Yes.
until March 31st or.
Of
and then-
2021.
And then all of a
Last year.
sudden, it
March
just,
31st
it
Yes.
just changed to, from
Yes.
50% to 100%.
Yes.
How many people are in now, do you know?
2.
There's always 2.
Yeah, there's 2 right now.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you for the sad news.
Reluctant aye.
Next proposed resolution is number 5. It's to amend the 2022 budget to reopen the address isolation quarantine housing project within the Chautauqua County American Rescue Plan Act spending plan.
Introduction.
John Anderson, Interim Commissioner, Social Services.
Diane Anderson, Director of Temporary Assistance.
We're bringing this resolution because this particular ARPA project was closed. We said, oh, we weren't going to spend this money. It's for, cover some costs to create rooms where people can be put into isolation or quarantine at shelters. It's not specific to COVID. It could be any reason that they should be quarantined. We had put out advertisements in an RFP and said, hey, anybody interested? And we didn't get any takers. So we basically gave back the ARPA money, minus a little tiny bit of advertising cost. And John has been in contact with some agencies that now may actually be interested. So this was a approved project before that, I guess it just didn't get off the ground before. And we're hoping that maybe we can try again, and I'll let John say what he knows.
Yeah, so one more thing that Valerie didn't mention that's changed is we have 2 shelter projects that are for Code Blue cold weather funding, or shelters in Jamestown that are in the process of establishment right now. One of them is temporarily helping without any funding at Joy Fellowship. The other would be at the Mental Health Association in Jamestown. Neither one of them are set up, as far as I know, to isolate or quarantine. And right now, we have, the only option we would have to isolate or quarantine somebody in the event that we needed to would be a hotel. And hotels in general have not been the right choice for sheltering. I think there's probably many people in the room that could speak to that. But it is not the right choice for sheltering, and certainly when somebody is sick and needs to isolate or quarantine because they don't have shelter, it is not the right option. We experienced that during the COVID pandemic, but at the moment, we do not have options available. And if there were a public health emergency or a need to do so, we would be caught on our heels, as we were somewhat the last time this occurred, and I think everybody across the state was. So that's why we're revisiting this, because we'd like to offer that opportunity to apply, for agencies to apply who are in the process of establishing shelter, so that they can take measures to afford the community the option of sheltering for isolation and quarantine. So that's what we're asking today.
Over the last couple of years, have you had to put people in, you know, utilize this in a hotel atmosphere? And if so, I mean, like 5 people a month? I mean, did you have to do 20 people? I'm just, a rough number.
It has not been a huge number, but there have been a number of those over the last couple of years, especially initially during the pandemic.
Sure.
And they were placed at hotels. It did cause a lot of issues in the community when we had to do these things. We also had, we used one of the 2 houses that we rent for emergency shelter for families. We assigned that over to isolation and quarantine shelter. And that was the house that we rent from Chautauqua Opportunities. And it did not work out well for a variety of reasons. So we really want to get on the right foot with this and set up shelters that really are designed to do this. Valerie did mention some of the measures that we would anticipate that a shelter could apply for, but just the fact that the existing shelter in Jamestown is not ADA, it's not accessible. So even, and that's for men, even if we wanted to isolate or quarantine somebody there, we could not if they had a disability that prevented them from accessing that building. We did run across that, we do on a regular and routine basis, but you know, there could be measures taken to improve the HVAC system. It could be a variety of things, but it would be so that we would have access to that in the event that we needed it. And it could be a very small need, it could be a very large need, it would be just dependent on the scenario that's presented.
When we were sending people to stay in hotels, you can only imagine, we were trying to find people to take care of the laundry, trying to find people to bring them food. Could we take them a microwave and take them some frozen dinners, and then whose freezer were those dinners going to stay in? And I believe that we did get some help from OFA on that for a while, but maybe not the whole time. It was a terrible mess, and there were certain businesses we tried to get involved with who didn't want to have anything to do with it. And, you know, we have, even though it hasn't really become a huge issue, hopefully it will never be so, but monkeypox is now an emergency, polio's coming around, even flu and this RHV thing. People could be, should possibly be quarantined for some of our more ordinary diseases that we have to protect the rest of the population in the shelter. So it would be good at any time. It's a need no matter what may be going on in public health otherwise.
A question, or also maybe a point you made too, is this new space or redoing current space? And my thought is too is the place will make this available, but then it'll either otherwise be not available when we do have a need for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the space isn't, you know, are we re-helping them do a space that won't be available, right?
I would hope that when we contract with the agencies for the service, we would ensure that that was available if they had the facility designed for that purpose. That's what I would anticipate we would contract with.
It's only $100,000 project.
Understood.
So it's going to be some money towards making rooms more appropriate for quarantine, but not to make them perfect for quarantine. We're only helping, we're not, you know, covering the entire cost of what would be needed to do this
Right.
properly.
Yeah.
There'd have to be other funds that they're utilizing and they tapped into to make the project itself available.
Right.
So we had tried to get this project out into the public. We didn't get any takers. And so we had added it to our budget And then we said, no, we're taking it back out of our budget because no one raised their hand. So we were just hoping that we would be allowed to try again. And if we are, then we could add it to our, find out what happens, do another RFP, bring it back into our budget again. Now that we actually have some people that
Yep.
are showing an interest.
Right.
Committee comments, questions?
So Joy Fellowship and the other, I can't remember the
The
other.
Mental Health Association,
Health.
yeah.
So they're interested in doing this? It said in the one whereas it's an applicant has recently been identified.
Well, Chautauqua Opportunities is in the process of establishing a women's shelter in Jamestown. We want to, so they would be eligible to apply. They applied for funding to New York State prior to the availability of this. So this would be a new thing for them to consider applying for. The Mental Health Association and Joy Fellowship both only very recently set forth a budget and a proposal for us to submit to the state to establish Code Blue Shelter in Jamestown. So at the point at which, and how long ago was that? Maybe 2 months or so? At that point, we hadn't had this conversation with them at all. But as far as the space that they're making available, we'd want them to consider adding isolation and quarantine capability to it as they put together their plan.
So an applicant actually hasn't come forward and saying, I'm
No.
interested in doing this? Because to me, it's confusing. I mean, you identified them, but they didn't seek it. so-
Well, yeah, there's been some conversations, but they haven't really been able to actually apply because our RFP ended, and so we're hoping to do it again. So they haven't been able to apply, but there's been some discussion that they would be interested in applying. That's kind of where we're at, I believe.
Right.
And this $100,000 would go partway
Yes.
to getting it. What if they didn't get the other funding and they spent the $100,000 and then? it's no
Chautauqua
good?
Opportunities has secured funding for their project, and they're seeking other funding as well. The other two applications, there is pre-funding available. They've started operation, and soon operations will start at the MHA with HUD dollars through the city of Jamestown. So that'll get them started. OTDA, which is our state agency, will provide ongoing funding and support to the daily operational costs of that shelter once it's approved. This is just anticipating that people would want to apply for funds to make their space accessible for isolation and quarantine, if that makes sense.
Probably does, I'm just not grasping, I'm not grasping it.
It's just hoping that this is a little bit of a gap filler for some of those
Yes.
people, if they're
Yes.
missing, if they need an extra
I
10,000,
mean-
20,000 for a project.
And to encourage them to think
I mean,
about
th-
adding
there's-
this to
Apply
their
if they
shelter.
apply.
There's not a requirement for them to do so with the agencies that they've applied for funding to. So this is above and beyond that because we know we don't have this available presently in the county, and we'd love them to make it available in the event that we need to use it.
So the project was approved by the ARPA committee, and we just wanted to see if we could, like I said, give it another try before we just say, okay, put it back into the ARPA pot.
So one of the bigger questions is who quarantines these people, who makes
I think,
that decision?
That would be the Health Department, a public health official.
yeah, the commissioner probably.
Any other questions, comments?
May I add just another comment, just to kind of help put this into perspective? Dr. Michael Falk, the interim director for public health. It's not uncommon, now take an entity such as our local hospitals in the county, to be challenged with a patient who may be diagnosed with a communicable disease such as COVID or influenza or RSV, which is otherwise known as respiratory syncytial virus. If these individuals are diagnosed with a communicable disease, it is impossible to send these folks to a shelter. And so what happens is the hospital then is on the hook to take care of these individuals until they can find, or we can find, an alternative shelter for them, which has been traditionally very difficult. And now we're in a situation where we have, you know, with our homeless crisis in the county, we have shelters opening up. And we hope that those, you know, become, you know, we hope to get more assistance in that regard. But that is a real life, everyday problem in our county. You know, having practiced, you know, in this region, that is a real thing. So we then, you know, turn to our hospitals to then take care of those patients. And in this day and age, it is difficult enough for people to seek acute care because of the backlog of the nursing shortage and therefore lack of beds in the not only in this region but nationwide. And so every little bit that we can do to kind of help this crisis, I think, is important. I mean, this doesn't solve all of the problems, but it goes a little ways to try to say, you know what, I have a COVID patient or a influenza patient in the hospital that I need to, you know, it has nowhere else to go. We have to go to the shelter, but this may provide an option to say, you know what, we actually have a space in a shelter that can provide isolation for that individual. So I think that just kind of gives a little bit more of a tangible, you know, real world, everyday kind of example of what we're dealing with out there, so.
Dr. Falk, I understand the need to do that. I know that you've all heard the concerns statewide and across the country about forced isolation and forced quarantine. And the concern with a lot of people is that you're gonna take these people and shove them into somewhere where they have to go and they have no choice and they can't get out. And so, I don't know, how would you address that? You've heard
You
that
know,
concern,
I
right?
don't think there's any real forced quarantine. I mean, we're really following, you know, right now, there really isn't, for a quarantine standpoint. You know, quarantine, we kind of go back to, you've had a contact with somebody with a communicable disease, and you kind of have to go somewhere for a
But
certain
you know
amount
what
of
I'm
time.
talking about, right?
Yeah.
The concern in the community.
I understand that, but I think that, you know, these folks really want to be somewhere. I think they would welcome the opportunity to have a shelter to be able to go where they otherwise can't. I mean, it'd be impossible to put that individual with influenza or COVID active symptoms and active positive test into a group of people inside a shelter. It just wouldn't be acceptable. So we're not saying, you know, we're forcing you to go anywhere. We're saying we want to give you an option of, here's a shelter that can accommodate you and is willing to accept you in to take care of you while you have to, you know, be in isolation for the next 5 days because of your COVID symptoms. Yeah.
So those individuals have that option. They can turn it down if they want.
Yeah, I mean, they can, you know, if they have a family member that could take them in, if they could, you know, but oftentimes, you know, some of these patients are, you know, unfortunately vulnerable and have absolutely no other place to turn.
Right, that's who these people are.
You know, yeah, they have the option of going to their apartment or their, you know, parents' place or for friends willing to take them in. These are really, it's really about, you know, our homeless population who has nowhere to go. And the homeless shelter can't otherwise take them because they have a, you know, influenza. I don't want to give it to everybody. So there may be, you know, a space within the shelter with the appropriate HVAC that they can go to safely and not transmit the virus or whatever it may be. I mean, we're talking about today, COVID and influenza and RSV, but, you know, next month or next year, you know, who knows what that might be. So we have to be prepared for some of that stuff, and we found it very difficult during the COVID crisis to place some of these folks, and as stated, the hotel thing wasn't the best option.
So I think I'm putting this in a different way, and I think I'm right in doing so. It's giving the shelter also the option to bring these people in and, separating them
Yes.
for the protection of the other
Yes.
That's exactly.
residents or inhabitants of that shelter who need that for warming purposes and other just shelter
Yes.
Right.
purposes.
These are people who have absolutely
So
nowhere to go.
it's protecting those people
Yeah,
as well
yeah.
and giving the sick person a place to go.
With basic emergency necessities.
So,
other than, an alternative other than sitting in a hallway bed in a hospital.
Yeah.
Right.
Where, in preventing others from receiving acute care in a timely fashion. Because
So-
that's the reality, right?
so coming to this meeting, I was against this. I don't know if I'm still for it, but yes, I think it's, just because of what
It does
Legislator
make
Rankin
sense.
said, that I don't want forced quarantine, forced isolation. It's that whole argument, but the way, thank you for your perspective and all of your perspective. It's,
And if this was for $3.5 million, you could be building yourself a place that you could force people to go to if you had to, because you have the space. For $100,000, you're looking to just make one room for someone that is in need of a room, you know, I
But to
understand.
think about it versus forcing them to say, offering an option to the people who don't have any other choice.
Certainly, and that's the way
Right.
we want to look at it today and make the decision for us.
And especially when we're talking about the code blue situation, right? It's, 15 degrees out, and here, the individuals in one of our hospitals that just got diagnosed with COVID, and they have no place to go, and it's 15 degrees. And now maybe we have a shelter or two that'll say, you know what, we can take care of that person. We can house them, it's completely voluntary, right? Whereas, now it's very difficult to be able to do that, so, it's and these are the types of things that we wanna try doing while we build our infrastructure in regards to that. It's just one tiny sliver of what we're trying to do, but, it seems relevant and appropriate in my eyes, so.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If not, all those in favor of the proposed resolution say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make a quick comment. We're in the midst of our proposed resolutions. We're going to keep going through. We're going to run out of our allotted time for our meeting. We have another meeting that started at 6. I don't know if there's another room for it or if there's,
Can Diane and I go
we'll
up?
just keep going, and I'm sorry, guys, but you're going to be late. I'm
Just
not
keep
sure
it
when
moving.
it's going to be.
Keep it
It's
moving.
going to be half hour
sit here
or
with you if you want
45
me to.
minutes.
No, it's okay.
We'll keep going.
Okay. Diane, you and I can go up.
Next resolution is to approve submission of New York State Department of Health polio virus outbreak vaccine provider agreement.
This is similar to some of our other vaccine provider agreements where the state provides us with vaccine. I came to you with one of these about monkeypox a little bit ago. We had one before for COVID vaccine. So what we need is approval for the county executive to enter this agreement with the state to accept this polio vaccine. I'm sorry, yes, polio vaccine at no charge from the state of New York.
Questions, comments, committee?
Yeah, I heard, as a member of the Board of Health, some of the concerns that it was becoming more prevalent in the public eye. But I guess I have two questions, is what's the impact right now and what kind of a threat are we facing? And secondly, when you talked about being administered to eligible individuals, how is that determined?
Dr.
So-
Falk is making his way down because that's not things I would know.
Okay, so-
I'm not a medical professional. I believe that as far as eligibility, it's people who are more with weakened immune systems and things like that. But I will let him answer these questions since he's the expert.
So,
I
what
missed some
kind
of the
update-
question there.
What kind of update do we have on the threat in New York State?
Yeah, so so New York State, polio was overall eradicated for the most part from the state and the country for the most part, with vaccine initiatives back several decades ago. It was several months ago, Rockland County in New York State reported a positive polio case in a young individual, a young adult, that resulted in significant neurologic deficits, which polio does, essentially causing paralysis. Those that are at risk for polio are really those that are unvaccinated. And so the state is basically saying, we want to have the opportunity to get, for those that are willing to get vaccinated, to have the vaccine ready and available at no cost, essentially. So the agreement, to my knowledge, is that the state basically is giving us the vaccine, and we're just entering into a contract with the state so that we have the vaccine available to give to those that want vaccinated. We have several populations of folks in the county that are unvaccinated that have been changing their mind and are willing to move forward with vaccinations. And we want to be there for those who decide that that's important for them.
And what does that mean, working with pediatricians? Are we looking at kids or?
It can be kids, it can be adults. You know, in certain populations in our county, there are the Amish population in particular. They, you know, certain populations and certain sects of Amish are opening the idea to vaccination. We just had, I think today, a vaccination clinic in an Amish community. So we want to be able to get, this is a devastating illness, and the more we educate, I think, about all of this, I mean, the last thing we want is for polio to reemerge and rear its ugly head in our society. It's a horrible, terrible disease causing terrible neurologic deficits that last a lifetime. We almost had it pretty much eradicated, but now with vaccine, it's preventable. And all of childhood vaccines, it covers it, right? It's a series of vaccines with, you know, through the pediatrician's office. The health department's doing vaccine clinics, getting out into the community, you know, doing those vaccinations when people want them. And, you know, I think, you know, I think our job as a public health department is to educate and offer the option to proceed with that when folks want to do that.
That's part of my question. How do we let the general public know that this is an issue again and they need to pay attention to it? Because most of us have grown up with it not being an issue because we got vaccinated as kids. It was pretty much eradicated. Is it Rotary who's working really hard on making that an issue? But
I'm not sure.
I just, you know, the general public, I don't think is well educated about the issue of polio vaccines. So what do we do about that?
Well, we can certainly do what we can to provide more education. I think there have been some things, I mean, I apologize, I've, you know, took over this position here a week and a half or so ago. So I do believe seeing, you know, I'm pretty sure I saw some things with press releases and things like that going out in regards to polio. I'd have to check on that. I'm not 100% sure. But, you know, we want to make this more available for those that decide that it's important for them to do. It's a personal decision that they make between their, you know, themselves and their physician or provider, or us as the health department. We'll give them as much information as we can so that they can make an informed decision whether or not it's right for them. And it is something that we highly recommend from a health department standpoint, right? I mean, this is a well-established, you know, good safety profile type of vaccination, and it prevents a terrible, terrible disease.
I'm 99% certain that there's been at least one press release. The state has been talking about it. It's been on the news. And on a personal note, I'm going to get it because I do not have records from when I was a kid. I don't know about you guys. People have baby books nowadays. I do not have one. And with my recent health issues and my compromised immune system, I'm going to get that shot. And that's pretty much what it's all about, giving me the opportunity to get that shot if I want it. And anyone.
And so this resolution really is to basically say that, you know, we're okay with the state giving us the vaccine, and we're entering into that agreement so that we can get that vaccine here.
Just say if it's coupled with public education as to why it's important, because I think a lot of people just aren't thinking about it.
Well, we are looking at our social media presence right now with the health department as we refocus and rebrand, and that is something that I think there are a lot of different, you know, media outlets that we can tap into, and I'm learning what those are. So we can do whatever we can to try to increase that public health knowledge, so.
We are on Facebook. I'm hooked in, so we've done some of that.
Any other questions, comments associated to this resolution? Thank you for the information you brought to us today. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution is to amend Chautauqua County Health and Human Services 2022 adopted budget for increased preschool costs.
This one is all about money, so I know a little more about this one. Basically, as you all know, our preschool costs have been escalating. Our budget for 2023 is quite a bit higher than our 2022. We saw about a 10% increase, I believe, over the last year for both regular providers and for our transportation cost, which is a very large portion of our preschool cost. So that's basically what this is we are actually seeing, as we've said for years and years, well, all these kids who, their families have been dealing with drug addiction, and the babies are born with issues, and we've all been saying this is going to come back to roost, and they're going to have problems. And we have been seeing it happening. There's a lot of kids out there needing a lot of help. And how often we've said that having a kid in preschool costs more than having, with preschool special services, costs more than having a kid in college. It's a very expensive program, and the rates are set by the state. The providers really did deserve an increase. I mean, they hadn't had one in quite a long time. So it wasn't an option on our end. We had to follow through with it. And we don't begrudge them that, but we needed to increase our budget for this. The resolution itself is budget neutral. We are dipping into our Medicaid weekly shares budget that we all know that during the year weekly shares has been decreased from what we expected it to be when we budgeted. And so we know there's availability there. And being such a large amount, that was our best opportunity to find money to cover this cost, because there's no resulting revenue loss with that line item. If we decrease that expenditure account, it's a clean decrease that we can just move it over. There is a 51% state reimbursement on our preschool costs, so that's what you're seeing here is the increase to the expenditures, increase to the revenue, and we are filling the gap with that Medicaid weekly shares.
You said
expenditure.
51?
I believe it's 51.
This says
51 or
59.5.
49.
It's 59 point.
I'm sorry, okay. We have many different percentages. There's
Yeah, I'm sure.
There's early intervention in preschool. I think maybe I'm talking about early intervention. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Is this expected to carry into next year as well? And does that also affect our budget for next year?
That's what I'm saying. We did increase our budget. Every year we hope to budget higher.
Yeah.
We come to you trying to be conservative. We often don't increase it as high as we think we really need to. This year we took the plunge. So I think in 2023 we should be safe.
Okay.
Because we have to keep coming to you and doing this every year. And you know that. And so we just brought it to you right at the budget meeting and said, let's start at a good place instead of knowing that this is going to happen later.
Thank you. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you for presenting. Next on our agenda today is the discussion, Human Services reorganization by our county executive, Mr. Wendell.
Yes, thank you. So what you've seen, what we're looking to do is propose, as we've talked several times, is a reorganization of our, what's currently Department of Health and Human Services, and also an integration with mental hygiene. What was discussed prior to, even with Christine Schuyler in this position, was after post-COVID is looking to separate public health and social services. We're understanding the requirements of public health and the attention that it needed, and also the large groups. So this situation isn't new. These discussions were already starting. After listening to the State of the County address last year, to the efficient, effective governments and the position I've taken on that, Carmelo Hernandez, as the Director of Mental Hygiene, was at a conference and had made connections with Orange County and also looped in with Chemung County, realizing that the plan that you see before you in this reorganization structure has been utilized. So not only is it a county larger than ours, but a county smaller than ours. And we felt one of the principles behind this was a lot of the services, not all, a lot of the individuals that seek, whether it's mental health services, sometimes often receive social services and likewise social services back and forth. So what we're looking at was basically like a warm handoff or a team approach to how to deal with our individuals so we didn't lose anybody through the cracks. A commitment that I made when I first became county executive was creating what we call the Human Services Cabinet. And in the cabinet is Office for the Aging Services, DHHS, Veteran Services, Probation, et cetera. And again, the principle behind that was unifying everyone and having a collaborative approach to our residents so people didn't get lost to saying, well, one person was going through VA or Veteran Services, another person was with Social Services, and somehow somebody got missed or somebody got missed an appointment. So what we're trying to do is more of a wraparound services and embracing, and at the end of the day, providing more effective service for our residents. So, Carmelo was instrumental in taking this on, came back with a plan, very structured. This began in about August. What we did is we brought 6 people from each department, 6 people from social services, 6 people from mental hygiene, and we started to have discussions of how we work together. What we found is there was a lot of departments, a lot of those 2 departments particularly, didn't have 100% understanding of what each other did. So we started those real germane, organic discussions, and it's really blossomed into what seems to be a very smooth transition. And again, having done that, we went out and the leadership management went out and spoke to all the departments that would be effective. I called it the Traveling Roadshow, made sure we discussed it with everybody so they were aware of what was happening, where we were going to go, and so people were aware. So it wasn't as if this happened and nobody knew what was going on. So again, a lot of good things have happened. A lot of good things have come from this. I asked if they could start with what we call Client Zero, which was a family we know was in both social services and mental health, receiving services from both, and how could we connect legally? And the reason I say that is because there are some HIPAA restrictions and discussions that may or may not be able to go forward. But we did come up with a universal release so we can discuss these, and the family was part of that, and we did see a lot of success in that. So we're going to continue with this. I'm really excited about this opportunity that we've taken on so far, and it really creates a lot more, and again, as you'll hear, really it's client-centered or our resident-centered as they provide the services. So what'll end up happening is you'll hear later we're going to create, we'll be creating what they call a chief medical officer that'll oversee the public health department. And then social services, with their deputy director, interim director right now is John Anderson. And then they have a deputy director of mental hygiene, Trish McLennan. And then they would both.
Just to clarity, can you redo that organizational chart?
So right now, social services for the most part operates within itself in DHHS. Public health operates within itself. There may be some overlap in some fiscal people. So what we're going to do basically is just like uprooting a tree. We're going to take social services. We're going to put it under the umbrella of Carmelo.
Yep.
So John Anderson would maintain that deputy director role of social services. And the reason I say deputy is it would be we're still focusing under with Carmelo. So John would be firmly the chief responsible person under social service to try it first before we started to roll it out. But what we've seen, and since this began, I thought, but again, it was been very effective, and we felt now is the right time to make this change. They're one umbrella Department of Health and Human Services. This happened, I believe, in 2011, primarily due to fiscal constraints that were put on us by the state at the time. So then County Executive Greg Edwards formed, Department of Health and Human Services, taking public health and social services and combining them. We modeled that after Cayuga County. Cayuga County no longer has that model, and I believe Cayuga County doesn't have a public health department. Or if they do, they've contracted that out with another neighboring county. So as we were told when we started this, is the model we followed doesn't even exist anymore. So, and one of the things you'll hear me say, and people have heard me say this publicly, New York State is consistently inconsistent. There is no statewide procedure. Some are public health, mental health, some are all three standalone depending on the size of the county. Some of them are combined, some have public health services with a neighboring county. So again, very unique in how the approach is. So, I know a good colleague of mine is the public health and mental health director in Montgomery County. So everyone's a little different, but Carmelo has done his research. I'm very close with the county executive from Orange County, Steve Newhouse. We've talked at great length. There's a great deal of success with his program. Plus, there's a couple of other initiatives that are sort of embedded in that program that we're looking to capitalize on as we go forward. So, Carmelo, the connection? What was the one they were talking about? There was one program you mentioned. From Orange County. I forget what it was.
Carmelo Hernandez again. So the program is Pathways, and Orange County utilizes it. And one of the things it does is to get the folks that are on temporary public assistance back to work. And another program that they utilized was with the Pathways was actually lowering, and they were actually successful in this in terms of foster care. So when Darcy Miller took over as the commissioner and with both departments, what she found it was about 360, and at present day is at 160 inside foster care.
I'm just curious about mental hygiene, which I think of as mental health. Why is that not part of Department of Health and it's separated out?
At the time, they're both. At the time, they were both. When this happened, it was starting to grow. So our mental health department is very large. At one time, currently right now, we have the largest mental hygiene roster in New York State. We have the 4th highest budget. If you were to put them under Department of Health and Human Services, you'd look at a department of nearly 400-600 people. So it was just, at the time, they didn't feel that putting them under the same was effective management.
Well, is
So
it
State Department.
budgetary or organizationally? I want to know how that makes sense, other than budgetarily.
A lot of what they do are clinics. We don't have clinics anymore in public health. So it's really, at the time they did it was at that time we did have public health clinics. We had mental health clinics. A lot of it financially, the billing and stuff was separate. So they've been separate departments.
So is that a common direction that it's going in across the state?
Lump it in with another department. I think we have a responsibility right now, which I don't know if I would have said that when I was first county executive, but right now we are in dire need of mental health services. And, having somebody between Carmelo and Trish McLennan, who worked at WCA and UPMC, so I think we have a very solid system
No,
going
I
forward.
absolutely agree. We need to work with mental health. We need it all across the board. I mean, crime and all kinds of things are related
Mhm.
into that. I'm just wondering why it's not tied in with the Department of Health versus.
It's just a path we chose and just didn't out, that's all. Like I said, consistently, it's not like Chautauqua County is unique in the fact that our mental health is standalone. There's different makeups throughout the state, but in this aspect.
It made sense for Chautauqua County.
Yeah, looking at Chemung and looking at Orange, we felt, and Carmelo, in the direction of what he sees, what they see as the needs, for the county and the best way to provide those services.
Question, I asked simple questions to just so I know exactly how it was gonna work. So Carmelo, you're gonna be having, added duties, correct? Is that correct?
To me personally, I wouldn't call them added duties because it's something that has been happening since I've got here anyway.
Okay.
And the reason I say that in all confidence is because of the simple fact that what DSS does on a day-to-day basis is what we do as mental health professionals. The only difference is our degrees and our scope of practice. But in terms of the inner linings of what case management is and wraparound services, that's stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis. And when I find myself with a situation, I ask myself, where we could have gotten better here? Or where could we have provided a little bit more support there? Or could we have been proactive and preventative and caught it sooner? So to me, some people would say it's added duties. To me, I say it is what I do day to day.
And the reason I asked the question is I'm okay with the adjustments and the changes, and will support the county executive if this is how he wishes to do the department. I just want to make sure we have the right amount of people that, you know, I appreciate what you've done with the mental hygiene program. I don't want that to suffer because your focus is now, you know, outstretched, so I want to make sure there's enough people in positions to make sure that all the proper things are getting done, and we're not trying to you know, save our budget by saying,
Getting the
you know,
support you
adding,
need.
yeah,
Well,
getting the support.
I
you
think,
need, so.
you know, first of all, we wouldn't be going down this road if we didn't think it was the right thing to do, and we wouldn't be going down this road if I felt it would be taking away from what Carmelo is doing already.
Sure.
The reason why we're focusing on the structure we talked about with Tricia McLennan and her experience and John is that it should not be a burden on Carmelo, and I don't believe it is because of the leadership structures we already have. So, again, asking, is there going to be more requirements, most important part of your treatment? Well, are they really the most important part? You know, what we're finding is really the person who they may have the best connection with is really part 7. But you got to get the foundation of part. It was balance it out to find out that everyone's part of this system of help, but who is more, we're going to prioritize, and in a sense, that way creating a better work ethic, not a work ethic, a better work model, and realistically, like more hands making lighter work. Now, you know, mental hygiene and social service will be working together instead of 2 separate silos as we continue, as we work in now. If I didn't clear that, I mean,
No, that's absolutely right. And then the one piece I'll say, even before I even spoke with PJ, the county exec, on even on what I found in my research, I spoke to Trish McCullen, who was here, Rachel. So I spoke to the team in mental hygiene, and I said, I think this can work, but I only came to PJ with their blessing. And Trish is right here while she's on vacation. And that's just a testament as to the team that we've built and the direction that we want to go, and we want to do that across for the whole county. So that's the motto, and that's why I feel that it's not so much as taking on more, it's so much as creating more impact and maybe more positive for the residents.
And realistically, you know, as well as Trish, is, you know, John Anderson and social services have been an integral part of this. Had worked separate times, you know, in their own silos, if you will. It was embraced. I did their own organic discussions back and forth. So realistically, the cohesiveness has started. It's not an integration, excuse me, it is an integration. It's not a collaboration or a merge, working together where we can.
Excellent job. I'm excited that this is happening.
Thank you.
Collaborative communication is the best communication. I think.
Thank you for
Thank
bringing
you.
that into us today. Anyone else have anything to bring in under other today?